to bring down unemployment? Jabu, let's start with you.
Yeah, clearly one day we'll have to try and find what causes one or the other between inequality, poverty, and unemployment. Yeah. But whilst we're waiting for that day to debate that, we do need to deal with issues of how we skill and educate our people. It is against this background that the issue of the abduction of these girls from an educational institution is one that we should reject and demand that these girls are returned. Because education and skilling is what we need for people to participate in the economy, firstly as producers and secondly as consumers themselves. An educated customer makes a better buyer. So for my part, we need to recognize that this inclusive growth, until and unless it can be shared by all, we are just on a time warp that it's soon going to come back to us. And as governments across the region, we need to learn to share learnings, share infrastructure, and be sure that we're all about growing the continent.
Thank you, Jabu. Yana.
Well, not just that I'm a trade economist and I come from the World Trade Organization. I think one of the lessons we need to take away here is that trade is part of the solution to our development in Africa. In spite of the current good growth rates, I would want to say they are still fragile because they are subject to external environment. If there's stagnation in the developed world and declining growth in the emerging economies, then Africa will still have problems. So a trade-led growth strategy is compatible with our sustainable development goals in education, in health. From trade, you get the income that would enable you invest in your socio-economic infrastructure. From trade, you could equally direct your foreign investment or your public investment in Africa from the natural resources that all our countries have into manufacturing, for example, where you create more jobs and which improve the poverty level and ensure inclusive growth. This is something I think we can talk about, we can help in the WTO by providing those rules that will allow you to keep in place the right policies. And I want to believe that if you look around the world with the increasing importance of free trade agreements, the MIC is involved in a transatlantic trade and investment agreement. There's a TPP and all kinds of arrangements. I think Africa should begin to also think of how it will take advantage of those free trade agreements by reducing barriers behind the borders in exchange for those factories that will give the kind of outcome that we are looking for.
Michael, over to you.
Well, let me say I agree with all of that, but let me just take this opportunity, given recent events, to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the families who are affected, and of course with the girls themselves. And our perspective, the United States perspective towards Nigeria, towards Africa, is one that is fundamentally oriented around democracy and development, and terrorism is an enemy of both. And so we have been pleased to offer assistance to the government of Nigeria, and that assistance has been accepted, and we are very much, I'm very pleased and honored to be here in Nigeria right now as an expression of our solidarity with the people of Nigeria.
Jean-Francois.
I can only concur with Michael's thoughts for the girls to return home as quickly as possible. But despite that, allow me to put the bull here and saying to the international business community, don't overlook the potential of this continent. Don't be afraid to invest. There are tremendous forces here.
Mr. President, I've left you with the last word.
Yeah, we just have to thank all of you, and for the business community, let me urge you that Africa is a green field. Nigeria is a green field, and you will not regret at all if you come to invest here. So you are welcome.
Thank you so very much for joining us today, and I hope that you've taken away some insights from our panelists, and I thank you so very much for joining us this evening. A big thank you to His Excellency, Mr. President Jonathan. Thank you very much for joining us today. Jean-Francois van Boxmeer, Chairman of the Executive Board and Chief Executive Officer of Heineken, Michael Froman, Director of Scheduling and Advance at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and Jono Frederick Aga, DDG, World Trade Organization, Mr. Jabal Mabuza, the Chairman of Telkom South Africa. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. From here, Lenny Jakos in Abuja, our special edition on the World Economic Forum on Africa comes to an end. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Well, there you have it. You just watched the plenary on partnering for prosperity at the World Economic Forum. President Goodluck Jonathan, among so many others who spoke up today. He's been there several times, actually, different sessions. And there you have him initially. Thanks everyone who came in spite of what we're trying to address in the country. He talked about the investment opportunities. So did many other participants there, but they're all giving that wrap up. The conclusion's there. Don't be afraid to invest. The opportunities abound here.
Well, I think, as I say, seeing is believing, and you know, sometimes believing is seen. But in this particular case, you have to come here for you to know what it is like. And well, for the big boss man of Heineken, he's seen it all, and you must agree that Nigeria is one of the best places they've ever invested in, and that is why he's saying it categorically: do not be afraid to come invest here. And that's a very, very important one. And Chamberlain, you also recall earlier sessions, they also talked about the need for Africans to also show the way. They should also be drivers. They should also be the kind of compass to other investors outside the continent, because if you are an investor, if you are an entrepreneur, and you also can have your investment in Africa, in your country, to show that truly it is a viable business and truly is something that has all the security you're talking about, then it is a pointer to all others who are looking from outside the continent, from outside the country, to say, truly, this is where we can actually come. And I'm so happy because the president actually set the stage by actually thanking everyone when he started, saying, against all odds, you have come. And now they have seen that truly what they have heard so far, truly we have a challenge. Truly, as Uhuru Kenyatta said, it's not an African thing, it's a challenge that the whole world should also come together and see how they can actually sort out. And you also heard what he's just said. One of the panelists did say that, well, the United States and a couple of others are worried and are concerned, and their hearts go out to those families that we really can't wait to see those girls return to the comfort of their homes. If you try to marry all of that to what we've seen so far in this last session, it means that we must emphasize the effectiveness of having a good partnership, partnering with everyone, and having an inclusive philosophy so that it doesn't look like you're standing alone. So it goes back to the saying which Africans will say, if your roof is on fire, you don't have to wait and say, well, it's not mine. So we're talking about collective responsibility, shared responsibility here, so that at the end of the day, it trickles down to what we'll all say is a better world for us all.
As a matter of fact, I mean, we've heard from the governors of Delta, Akwa Ibom. I mean, Lagos as well. You also have Kaduna, Katsina.
Yeah, Katsina.
Rivers. Now, these are states who they talk about making their states an investment hub. How people can come in there and take a look at the investment opportunities. They don't just want to rely on the oil and gas sector or the mineral resources alone. They say that there is a lot more beyond just the natural resources. But they also may also understand that the infrastructural development is key. Education is key. For the investments that are coming into the country to stay, we will need education. And they talked about not relying too much overtly on university education, We need those other types. You need technical education. You need the plumbers. You need the electricians. You need the carpenters. You need the welders. These are the people who will sustain the economy as well. And then they tell us what they're doing in the private sector. The president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, they're also speaking earlier on that session, Forging Inclusive Growth, Creating Jobs, which is the theme of this forum. He started out by talking about what they've done, 120,000 jobs at a certain time. And then you have that U-Wing program, which he says that they also did, and 18,000 government scholarships will be coming to Africa. So it's huge. The Chinese premier was also here.
Well, I'll come back to the Chinese premier. Chamberlain, you just have touched on a very, very important aspect which has to do with some of these states you've just highlighted. Yeah. One other governor I really am very, very sure you'll be excited to speak with is Governor Sherman of Katsina State. He's a fantastic guy. He's got so many great ideas about how you really can change things, and he's also been speaking, and he's greatly concerned about the security situation, and he has a template. He has so many things, and he says, well, it's not a northern affair, it's a Nigerian thing, and it's an African affair, it's a world affair, and I really can't wait for us to have him talk tomorrow. But again, drawing from what we've had over time, you recall yesterday we spoke with the governor of Akwa Ibom State. Yeah. He spoke about the potential in his state as well as so many other states in the country. But more importantly, if you look at Akwa Ibom State, you see that he's been able to change what I asked him specifically about what has been the tradition before now. People not going to school, people being used for menial jobs, and how he's been able to reverse that trend by putting in place a better form of education system, some kind of incentive to help these people to go back to school. And well, it translates into what we've seen in Delta State, what the governor did say today. He talked about human capital development, which is very, very key, Chamberlain, because once you develop the human, then every other thing will fall in place. And Dr. Odoha said, well, away from all of that, you remember, before this one with the president, we're talking about something that has to do with the health sector. And, well, for Dr. Odoha, he says, well, the medical tourism is another place he's really keen, well, of course, understandably, because he's a medical doctor, but that's one issue we're hoping that, well, for Delta, you can recognize the state and say, well, this is the place to go. You recall, if people are saying that so many things can't happen on the continent, you must go to Asia, Premier has said it, all of the People's Republic of China. And he's saying, look, we'll see how we can assist you. We will give half of what we've got to help translate into all of this into reality on the continent. But the bottom line, because people definitely will be so scared and afraid and say, this form of goodies coming from China, don't you think there must be something for us to be afraid of? And he said, don't be afraid, because we won't interfere in your foreign policy. We won't interfere to show you how to run your affairs, because you are a sovereign state and a sovereign nation. And I'm sure if Africans start to look in that direction, we're looking at brotherhood irrespective of your continent, irrespective of your race, irrespective of your country, then definitely we'll be creating a better world, because ultimately in all of this we're talking about is creation of a better world. Because if I am having any form of strife in my country, when it snowballs into a bigger crisis, you have refugee issues and even so many other things to contend with. So that is why we're trying to see how this can work for us. Better still, Nigeria is showing the focus, is showing the point. Chamberlain, you also recall what the president did say. He said, well, if you say this country is being rated as one of the poorest country, how do you explain it when you have some of these people, A, B, C, and D, that have been able to harness all of this potential to the extent that they've been listed in some of the fantastic business lists all around the world? And don't forget, with the rebasing of our economy, we just realized that, hey, wait a minute, it wasn't all about oil after all. We have so many other sectors of our national life that needs to be, shall I say, enhanced, empowered, and actually explored. And until we get to see people come in to see how they can actually explore some of this, you really can't tell what you're missing out.
You know what? It does come across as though China is making a massive statement to the world. Now, of course, they got a big economy, big population, most populous. Well, now, they come with this investment drive. Now, the president recognized that we've got about 24% unemployment rate with the youth population we have here. But he says, we have to begin to talk about social safety nets. And the African governments are doing the same thing. And so they very optimistic that the investment that will come here, the opportunities are here, and that they should go ahead without fear and invest. So that's some of the highlights of the forum, the economic forum today, which held, and don't forget another major sessions, as a matter of fact, will be on tomorrow. So we will hand you back to Lagos. I'm Chamberlain.
Well, I'm Sulaiman Aled. Don't forget at at 8 o'clock we'll be having another wrap-up of all the events, and some of these participants will also be right here in our studios live to bring you some of what is to come, especially tomorrow.
Bye for now.